Time for Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, episode 152. Paul's got his review of the new Microsoft Kin phones. He'll take a look at some updates to Windows 7, and it's the end of the line for Windows 2000 and more. Coming up, Windows Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com. This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, episode 152 for April 16th, 2010. Tool-Free Zone. Windows Weekly is brought to you by Go to My PC. For those of us who work around the clock, access your files and applications around the clock too with Go to My PC. For your free 30-day trial, visit gotomypc.com/Windows. And by Carbonite, the leader in online backup. Back up your PC or Mac off-site securely and automatically. For a free trial offer plus 2 free months with purchase, go to carbonite.com. Offer code TWiT. And by audible.com. To download a free audiobook of your choice, go to audible.com/Windows. It's time for Windows Weekly. And for those of you watching live, it's way beyond time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott is here. Thank you for your patience, Paul Thurrott. I'm about an hour and a half late starting the show because I got waylaid, as I often do, on the third Thursday of the month at my kids' high school. I'm a member of the board. But I take it, Paul, that you find something gainful to do when I'm not around.
Gameful, did you say?
I wasn't going to say it. Yeah, I wasn't.
I have been playing Call of Duty.
Now, as a published author and someone on deadline for another book.
Mm-hmm. Maybe there would be a better way to spend my time.
Well, I'm just wondering, do you find it a distraction?
Call of Duty?
Yeah.
No, I find the rest of life to be a distraction.
Yes, that's what I thought. My son, now tell me if my son is wrong here. He calls it COD.
He is wrong.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
COD.
COD. COD.
Is Call of Duty really that hard to say?
Nobody wants to be playing COD. Oh, yeah, I'm playing COD 4, MOD2, MW2.
It's like an Amiga game, James Cod, the mystery fish or whatever it was.
But apparently the young people these days do call it COD. I mean, I hope
not. I would almost have to resist slapping somebody if I ever heard him say it.
I'm going to tell him that. Don't make me hit you.
I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm just saying. No, I'm on a reward system like a gerbil in a cage. And I learned this from the guy that got me into writing, and it's basically a write reward kind of cadence, I guess you would call it.
So the reward, like the pellet for the rat, it would be a pellet of food.
Yeah, and for me, it would be some sort of distribution of Microsoft points or an amount of time, to play
an hour at COD.
Yeah, like I've written a paragraph. Now I will play an hour of video games. I expect my book to be done in 2013.
That seems a fair ratio. 1-to-1, paragraph an hour. That's perfectly reasonable.
It's amazing how much writing you can get done between games.
Like while the
30-second spot.
That's what I was going to say. While the cutscene's loading,
write quick.
Write a paragraph. Good. That's efficiency.
So if you are watching, we should point out the shirt.
Yeah, let me see that shirt. What is it? It says tool with the universal sign for no or banned.
This is thank you to Collins Byrne.
Oh, Collins is great. T-shirts, plush. Yeah.
Yeah, he sent this to me, asked me if I would wear it today.
That's hysterical. Collins is great. He was actually in studio.
An apology of sorts. I felt like,
You called me a tool, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm even more of a tool. I'm actually, I can't live without the iPad.
Wow.
No, seriously.
We don't want to talk about that.
See, if you had an iPad, you could be doing Call of Duty right now. See, what I'm doing right now is I'm just harvesting gold in my farm. And as soon as I'm done, did you see? By the way, do you watch South Park?
I do, but I haven't watched any of the new shows.
Oh, the new season. Everybody's raving over the new season, and I finally saw the Facebook episode.
Okay. Yeah, I heard about that. No, I will.
Hysterical.
Did you see the SNL news bit this weekend where they said, Apple sold, 350,000 units on the first day and starting a new market for people who want to buy stuff just to find out what it is.
Yeah, because 350,000 of them were sight unseen, were pre-orders. That is pretty amazing, isn't it? Just makes me think back to those days of the UMPC and the Microsoft tablet PC. And
Yeah, I'm sure they sold at least 350,000 units over the past 10 years.
Hey, so what's going on with the SuperSite for Windows? But by the way, I didn't give you the plug. Paul is, of course, the guy behind the Windows SuperSite, winsupersite.com.
I assume we're all friends by now.
Yeah, Windows IT Pro News Editor. He's also the author of Windows 7 Secrets and soon to be, what is it going to be called? iPad Secrets?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Windows Phone Series 7 Secrets?
Leo, the iPad is so simple, no one needs the book.
It's true. It's true.
You know?
It's just, it fits in your hand like it always was there.
Yikes.
Roseanne Barr used to make that joke.
And if you're a PC user, it was always there, at least for the past 10 years. Anyway, I'm sorry. What are we talking about?
We were talking about the new book, what the title will be?
Oh, Windows Phone Secrets.
Windows Phone Secrets.
Yep.
Okay, you could write
notice
a book
they
about
got rid of the
7
word series
series
at the end of that name.
We're going to talk about, there is a new, actually, Microsoft Phone. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But before we do, I have to say, there has been a change at the SuperSite for Windows.
Yes, it has. A bad change in some ways, but a change nonetheless.
You don't like it?
No,
you didn't want to do this. You didn't want to go there.
No, I did not want to do this. Years ago, in fact, when we first started recording this podcast, I used to blog over at the Internet Nexus, right, which has been my site
blog.
dating back to, I think, the mid-1990s, a long, long time. And I blogged at that site for many years. And then at some point, I think my company, the company that I write the SuperSite for and do a bunch of the other stuff, said, hey, why don't you blog, over here at the SuperSite, and we can monetize it and all that kind of stuff.
Monetize it. There you go. There's the magic word.
That made a lot of sense. But there's a lot of problems with the SuperSite blog. So I have been doing this since, I don't even know, 3 years now, probably.
Partly because they use kind of an old-fashioned content management
it's
system.
Awful. It's
okay, you said it.
Community server, which is terrible. It is, if you're looking for the link to it, by the way, it is.
I actually am. It used to be right here.
Go to the top. Yeah, it's not there anymore. Go to the top right. You'll see it on
Alt?
No.
Alt?
Below there.
Xbox?
The second blue link below there.
Oh, blog. There you go. It's the one in little tiny letters, the fine print.
You can almost get the idea of I'm embarrassed by it.
Don't be embarrassed, Paul.
No, but the problem is, the content management system is lousy.
Yeah, but the content is great, and that's what matters.
The look of this, the look of the site,
bland.
Resembles the SuperSite as it did 4 years ago, or whatever.
A little bland, but that's okay.
A little bland.
Because we're there for the content, I'm telling you.
Well, the problem is, though, that it has become very popular, and
of course it has.
We don't allow people to, or at the time we weren't moderating the comments, but it turned into what I call a cesspool of ridiculous back and forth.
It's those Apple users.
Apple users camping out there and mocking me all day long.
It's those
whatever.
Apple users. That's what it is.
I've been talking to my company about maybe having people do this for me, moderating it. But in working on the Windows Phone Secrets blog, in the build up to the book, I have a moderating comments there. And that's actually worked out really well because it keeps the stupidity out.
I think you have to. I hate to say it, but I think you have to.
So last weekend, I decided just to put a stop to it, and I began moderating it. So if there's anyone listening to this who had gone to the blog and sort of said, well, okay, some of this is kind of interesting, but the comments is out of, section is out of control, or or it's so out of control, it's not even worth visiting. I just wanted to let people know that there's a new sheriff in town, baby. But now I'm personally moderating it, so nothing gets up there until I okay it, which is just a lot of work, but it's
so
okay.
It's you doing it. It's not the community doing it.
No, I want to, and I think I want to get it to the point where someone is kind of doing it for me. But honestly, right now, one of the reasons that I'm doing it is I want it to turn into that thing that a lot of what I do is, which is a conversation. And if I moderate it, then I can reply to things. And if someone asks me a question, I'll see it. If someone else was moderating it, it would be easy for me to ignore. But by moderating it myself, it's something that I can take possession of and be part of.
Yes. You
I'm
own ownership. You own it now.
Yeah.
Work it, Paul.
It's a different thing.
Work the comments.
But there's been a lot of stupidity in there, so.
Yeah, no, you have to do it. I'm sorry. The internet, let's face it, as one Italian judge said just the other day, he's not the Wild West.
Is that how he said it?
He said it just like that. Many people don't know that Italians speak English, but they do it with an Italian accent.
Stereotype chef guy from
Yes.
Italian restaurant.
Yes, he's Italian.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in the Google case. The judge said, we cannot let the internet become the wild West.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sitting in front of my computer for much of the day anyway.
Right.
So
might as well.
This is one of the windows I can have open.
It's that or Modern Warfare.
Yeah. Well, we can do both.
Can you do both?
Sure. I'm playing Modern Warfare.
Are you doing it right now? Come on.
All you have to do is watch my eyes to know I'm not really here,
Pardon me, I'm sorry. I was busy attending. I had artichokes to raise there. You weren't saying anything, were you?
Me?
No. Hey, let's take a little time out, shall we? And get back to the show in just a moment. Before we do, I do want to mention a great sponsor. Would that be okay? Because you've got such good news. Such good news about the new Microsoft phone.
Okay.
About Modern Warfare 2. You've got Windows 7 tips. But before we do any of that, I've got to mention the good folks at Citrix who have done the best thing ever, the best remote access program ever. Now, they do the high-end enterprise remote access. They practically invented the category. They're the ones who, sold the Microsoft the first remote access products. They've also done a consumer version that's easy to use, and that's called Go to My PC. And let me tell you, this is the one you want. Now, yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, there are free remote access solutions out there. And if your time is not that important to you, if you don't mind dealing with those things, go right ahead. But if you want to get the job done, you want speed, reliability, security, Go to My PC is the right way to go. For many of us, our jobs really aren't just 9 to 5. We work around the clock, whenever an idea comes to us, or we just, I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm there, I'm happening. And with Go to My PC, I can log into that office computer. I can get work done. I can send and receive email on my corporate account. I can get files. I can run any application that's on the office computer. It's the easiest way to do remote access. If this sounds like you and the way you work, you are going to love Go to My PC. It means you can get what you need to get done whenever the mood strikes you. It's really kind of a hippie product. It's for hippies. If you're not a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, if you're a 24/7 type of person, this is for you. Don't live in the box. Break out of the box. Go to mypc.com/windows. You can try it free for 30 days. GOTOMYPC.com/windows. Try it free. And we thank them so much for their support of Windows Weekly and that hippie, Paul Thurrott. He's a hippie.
I am kind of a hippie.
Are you? I'm a hippie. I admit it.
My daughter's a hippie.
Is she?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yep.
My daughter's going to a hippie school. She's decided.
What school is that?
She's going back your way. She's going to be at Bard, which is in Upper New York State.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Just a couple hours from the Thurrott manse.
Sure.
She could just pop in for
We
Thanksgiving.
do need a new babysitter.
She's good.
Someone who doesn't have friends that take stuff. Oh.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
Yikes.
Ow.
She's potentially a problem. So.
So a good quarter for PC sales. Maybe, economists have gone back and forth about whether the recession is over. The latest is it's not over, but it's getting there.
It appears to be over in the tech sector, though, doesn't it?
Isn't that good news?
Yeah.
What are the numbers?
Yeah, the numbers are really interesting. So almost 82 million units sold in the quarter worldwide. And by the way, that's the first quarter. That's the post-holiday season, the middle of the winter.
Is this not the slowest time normally?
I would think this quarter and maybe the summer kind of vie for the worst of the year. But
right.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just such a down time. 17.5 million units sold in the United States. But, the big news is that these are huge growth numbers over the same quarter last year, 26% on average for worldwide sales and about 18.6% growth in the United States. The positions of the various players haven't changed at all. It's HP, Acer, Dell, Lenovo, and then Asus and Toshiba are tied for fifth.
HP's number one, and this is desktop as well as notebook, or just desktop?
It's all PCs.
All PCs.
So desktops, notebooks.
And U.S. only or worldwide only?
Both.
Both.
So that was worldwide. That was what
that's interesting.
Yep. And the worldwide figures are interesting because they're different from what you see in the United States. HP has a significant lead. Half again as many PCs sold as number 2, which is Acer.
Wow.
Dell is number 3 worldwide, not number 2 like they are in the U.S. Right. They're only a bit below Acer, but of course Acer has surged in recent years because of their EPC line and the netbooks that they sell. And then Lenovo factors into the top 5, but they don't in the United States. So Lenovo actually sells some north of 75% of their computers outside of the United States, which is kind of interesting. And then inside the U.S., they're saying HP is number 1 versus Dell at number 2, although Dell and HP are actually very, very close in the U.S. It's like 26 versus almost 25% market share. It's not a big difference. Acer is number 3, Toshiba is number 4, and Apple is number 5. But
so Apple has no presence worldwide, though.
No,
none.
No, and next week Apple will announce their sales figures for that quarter.
Right.
And when they do, we can determine what their worldwide market share is. But I want to say the last time we did this, the previous quarter, it was just under 4%. It was like 3.7, somewhere in there, I think, off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
But the big news from both IDC and Gartner is now that they both adjusted their expectations for the year upward. And now they're saying somewhere between 15 and 25% growth for the year, which is fantastic because last year the PC market only grew about 5%.
Wow, that's great news.
Yeah, so this is good news pretty much all around.
I think that does mean there's probably good news for the recession overall. Why do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, what is it? What
do I think?
You can't say it's Windows 7 anymore. I mean, that's...
Yeah, well, actually, they are saying strong demand for Windows 7. That is one of the things that they both
So
said.
is it business, you think, that was a little bit slow?
No, someone brought this up in the comment section of my blog, which I'm now moderating. And,
yes, you actually read them now.
Actually, there's some interesting conversations occurring.
Wow, look at that. Who would have thunk it?
But one of the things that's changed in recent years, it used to be that business sales were overwhelmingly the majority of what constituted the PC market. That's not true at all anymore. In fact, the consumer market is much bigger than the business market.
Interesting. I didn't know that. When did that change?
This is one of those things that just kind of happened over time.
On us,
yeah, it's not an 80-20 type thing. I mean, but the consumer market is over 50% of the PC sales.
And Windows 7, I'm sure, helps that because it really is kind of well suited.
Yeah, people are going into stores and buying PCs, and there's no qualms at all.
Right.
Whereas in the past, there might have been some concerns like, well, I don't really want Windows Vista for whatever reason.
Right.
How can we make that work and that kind of thing? But they are, of course, seeing business uptick happening as well. And again, businesses are stingy to begin with. And anytime there's an economic downturn, let alone an historic one.
IT is the first to go.
It's the first to go. Yeah. So they're actually finally starting to see this. And Microsoft has some numbers to support the notion that people are actually upgrading to Windows 7 as well. I almost said Vista there.
Interesting.
It's out of my system. But who doesn't, I guess.
That's good news.
Yeah, so good news all around.
We were talking about Windows 7 Service Pack 1. When is that due out? Is that fall?
Yeah, so probably around October. I mean, that's the schedule last I heard.
Usually it's like 1 year later is kind of the, I mean.
Big, the funny thing is we talked about this on the podcast a long time ago, but it's not something that's been out in the news. So Microsoft, a couple weeks back, confirmed what we had been talking about before, which was that Service Pack 1 for Windows 7, the client OS, and Service Pack 1 for Windows Server 2008 R2, which is the server OS, is actually the same update, right? Because they're built off the same code base. When you apply this Service Pack to server, you get all this extra new functionality, especially around the Hyper-V virtualization stuff. But on the client side, on Windows 7 side, they're saying basically no functional changes at all. So Service Pack 1 has leaked. I've installed it now on a couple of PCs. In fact, I've become so old, I guess, is the only way to
Old.
say it.
That's a good way to
I
describe
have to
it.
think that 5-10 years ago, I would have jumped all over this thing and been writing a lot about it, regardless of the fact that there's nothing going on. But it's funny the way I sort of
You're not
approach-
old. You're jaded.
I am. I'm old and jaded, so which is a great
It
combination.
could be both, yeah. Well,
like
they
the
usually
tri-
go together. They're hand in hand.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know nothing's coming. I've been told this, and the thing
In the
leaks.
sense
I
that
didn't
it's
even-
just a roll-up of service packs. No new features.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, a bunch of people emailed me and said, hey, how come you're not writing anything about this, And I thought about it, and it's like, yeah, you're right. So I installed it on
Did you sigh deeply? Did you sigh deeply first and then say,
No, you know what I said? I said to myself, this is something I could do while I'm playing Call of Duty. So
in fact, don't I have an old article I could just change some numbers on?
yeah. No, I didn't do that. But I did document the installation process. I installed it on a physical machine. I installed it on a virtual machine. I've only looked at it a little bit. I mean, in fact, it's so nondescript in some ways. I mean, I almost might just install it on my main machine just in case that something different raises its head. I just don't expect that to happen.
Right.
But so far, nothing to see here.
How
But
close is this to the final?
I think we're going to see it in October. So
Got to be pretty close then. No,
it's actually pretty close. So it's a pre-beta.
it's April.
I don't know if there's going to be a public beta or not.
If it's just a roll-up, don't they just kind of wait till like September and then say, here's everything?
Yeah, they could, but you need to remember because this is the same service pack that's servicing server.
Yeah.
There's a lot of additional stuff going on there, and that's going to require some heavy testing.
Okay.
So I would expect that this year there's going to be a lot of testing of this stuff. So potentially we will see a public beta, but certainly there will be a full-fledged beta, and then they'll go through whatever the development process is. But I would expect this thing to be on track before the end of the year, certainly.
Cool. Boy, even I kind of lost a lot of energy on that.
It is, well, like I said, I mean, it's
just what it is. It's
right. It would be irresponsible
story is
not to mention it.
It's
It's
a
not-
negative story, which is
Well, it's not a negative
no.
story.
It's a unstory, not negative. It's like
Yeah.
just so you know, there isn't a whole lot of new stuff. It's just what it normally was, what it used to be before XP Service Pack 2, which is a roll up of patches.
And by the way, if you're a longtime Windows guy, you miss those days, right? I mean, you really do.
When there was something to write about, something to talk about, something exciting.
And I think the one thing that's changed between that pre-SP2 time frame and today is that even back then, the mantra for Microsoft's corporate customers was you have to wait until Service Pack 1 before you install any version of Windows.
I don't think we say that.
I would say with this one, they've really done it. You could make that argument that
you know why
Windows 7 is sort of like SP3
exactly
Vista anyway.
You know why it is a service pack.
Well, fine. I mean, however you want to define it, that's fine.
Yeah.
But Windows 7 is to whatever level of quality. I don't think there's any reason to wait. And when you see the service pack, you realize waiting for this isn't going to give me anything.
Actually, that was mean of me, and it's not true at all. I think Windows 7 is much more than a service pack for.
Well, no, actually, there's an argument to be made that from a functional standpoint, from an end user standpoint, it's a major update, right? Because there's a lot of good UI stuff going on there, additional features and so forth, and it's nice. From the standpoint of someone who's going to roll this thing out in a corporation, it is very much a minor update or even a service pack type update because the lower level stuff and the tools that you use to make that happen haven't really changed that much at all. So technologically speaking, that argument that 7 is Vista done right, yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what it is.
Oh, okay. I was gonna,
that's not bad. It's not negative.
It's not bad. No, it's good. It's what you want.
Right.
And I think it's also, I've said this so many times, I don't even know why I'm bothering to say it. This is my version of the unstory. It's a symptom of the maturity of the operating system space.
It is.
Thank you.
I agree with that as much as I can.
Whole bore. Full-heartedly. All right, come on. I want to know about the kin. I can't take it anymore. Tell me. What do you think?
You and I are both approximately 3 times as old as we need to be to own one of these phones. Let's get that out of the way first.
Okay, all right.
They're looking at, it's funny, I've seen this age range described so many different ways. I'm no longer even sure what it is, but it's somewhere in the, let's say, 17 to 35-year-old range. It's most likely people in their
20s. 20s. It's 20
young
years.
20s.
Young 20s. It's Kevin Rose and his ilk.
Well,
actually, he's too old now for this.
The market was described to me in a way that was almost humorous because it's really designed for kids who are still living at home, which could be in your 20s. I mean, obviously today, still financially dependent on their parents in some way.
Interesting.
Will most likely be sold to people who are on a family plan, right, on Verizon, which will save some money, and couldn't actually afford this thing if they had to pay for it themselves.
Oh, very interesting. How expensive is it?
They're not saying because Verizon is the exclusive carrier in the United States and, Vodafone eventually internationally, but they're going to have a separate announcement about the pricing. My expectation is that devices will be very inexpensive and that the data plan and the whole cost, the monthly cost, will be significantly less than what you see with an iPhone. And I'm thinking 50% or less.
But maybe not if these tweeners are,
but they can't even afford that. So the idea is, you have a daughter in college.
Mom and dad can't afford it. Is who can't afford it. Mom and dad are not going to allow them a $60 data plan. Is what you're saying.
If you have any Verizon stuff, we have a bunch of Verizon phones. We have Verizon Fios service and so forth. There are a lot of advantages to having multiple things together on the same bill and all that stuff. And I suspect that part of the deal is if you're doing all that this will be a significantly better deal, and that it's an aspirational device in the sense that, kids want the best technology. They want the new and cool thing, whatever that might be. They might want an iPhone or an Android phone or whatever, but those things are actually really expensive, right? I mean, it's $80 a month at least. And by the way, $80 a month with the cheapest SMS plan. These are people who are going to SMS all day long.
You need an unlimited SMS.
It's the unlimited, and that's what we're talking 100. Yeah, so $100 a month.
Yeah.
So that's expensive.
A lot. Yeah, I'm not going to buy that for Abby.
Yeah, so if it was $40 or $50 a month, maybe, right? And maybe the kid does pay part of it. Maybe this is part of their, whatever. I mean, maybe, I think that it's an interesting kind of market. Obviously, once you get out of the house, if the kid is living on their own but they're very young, this is another type of thing where you're in a situation where money is tight and you could just sort of afford this. Maybe $50 a month does it, but $100 a month isn't going to cut it. But it gives you all those things that you as kind of a young hipster would be into, all of the integration with those social networking services and all the SMS stuff. It's got a hardware keyboard. It's very much, there are two models, and they both have hardware keyboards, and touch screens, right? And there is no option at all for a software keyboard on these things. It's all hardware, right? But again, I apparently, and I do see this, I have to say, I'm always kind of amazed if I'm in a public space. I'm always amazed to be in a public space, period. But if I'm on a...
They still let you out, huh?
Yeah, I know. It's
you have to wear the ankle bracelet, though, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
But at least it's technology, and it's a conversation starter. But if I'm at a basketball game or on the train or whatever it is, you can see people using these devices that I would never even consider using. They have slide-out keyboards.
Right.
You see them, and they're kind of...
Oh, yeah, the LG Envy. I see a lot of Envies out there, and I go, why? Who are you?
And that's who these products are for, right, for those people.
Yeah.
The people who can really go to town on a hardware keyboard. There is it's funny, on the Windows Phone 7 phones, they have those 3 dedicated hardware buttons, right? Back, start, and search.
Right.
There are 2 dedicated hardware buttons on both of these phones that I find very interesting. Well, actually 3. One is a phone button, which is nice. But the other 2 are search, right? And emoticon.
There's hardware emoticons?
There's actually an emoticon button on the keyboard.
Well, they probably said
these people they're texting. Right. This is what they want.
Actually, come to think of it, there is a software emoticon button on the Android.
Interesting.
It's like on the right of the space bar, there's a emoticon.
Okay, and I don't think there's anything like that on the iPhone, right? Seems like something I've noticed.
No, I'm wondering. Let me look at the iPad keyboard because
the iPhone does translations of things into emoticons, right? If you do colon, open close parentheses.
Well, maybe it does. It depends on the program.
I think it does.
Yeah.
So there's that.
No, it's only on the Android. Isn't that interesting? Android does have an emoticon, but what's funny? Of course, this is Google. What's funny is instead of actually putting a graphical emoticon in there, it puts colon dash right parenthesis.
Such geeks.
It's the ASCII. So it has an ASCII. It's like, oh, we'll save you the 3 key presses.
That's what Sergey Brin said it had to be.
Yeah, because, well, we want to be compatible with all existing systems now or present or forever, ever, and ever. So, yeah, isn't that funny?
So, you know, the phone, I have to say it's funny. I talked to Microsoft in the Vegas terms about this thing before I saw it, you know, the other day. And someone had asked me there if I was going to include any information about this in the book about Windows 7 or Windows Phone 7. And I said, you know, no. I mean, why would I?
So it's not the same as Windows Phone 7.
But as it turns out, it is, in fact, based on Windows Phone 7. It is the basic core of the OS is the same.
So this is really the first Windows 7 phone.
It is, yeah. In fact, when it ships next month, it will be the first Windows Phone to ship with that Zune service. It will do over-the-air Zune Pass. You can stream audio from the Zune Marketplace over 3G. It will have that whole, you know, music plus pictures interface, the Zune interface, you know, for accessing your collection. It will integrate with the Zune PC software. It's pretty cool. I mean, just for that reason alone, I mean, that makes it very interesting. So now I'm wrestling with how much, if at all, I should cover this device. And I think I'll just I'll mention it here and there. But
so when they acquired Danger, because this is really the Sidekick group, the Danger group.
But here's the interesting thing about that. This was started without the Danger team. This was a separate team at Microsoft that did this.
Huh.
The folks who worked on Danger, or on Sidekick, the Danger folks, are actually on this team now, but they were brought in after the fact.
Well, that's
so
very
they didn't
interesting.
actually, they didn't actually, you know, have anything to do with the design of it. And you know, the way it was explained to me is that they felt like they could use their expertise on this kind of device because it was very similar. But yeah, I would say, spiritually speaking, this is the successor to the Sidekick, except for one thing. You know, the Sidekick is actually a T-Mobile product, right?
Right.
It's exclusive to T-Mobile. It's not something that can be sold in any other.
Oh, so they don't have the right to do that. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So this phone is not, right now, temporarily at least, is exclusive to Verizon and Vodafone, although that could actually change. They don't want to talk about that too much because obviously Verizon has a lot at play here, and Verizon's going to be doing a lot of the advertising and all that stuff, and I guess that's going to start up soon. But right now, this is very much exclusive to Verizon.
I kind of want one.
Yeah. Well, so here's
do you have? You don't have one. You don't. But you've touched one.
No. I've used one, and I'll be getting one eventually.
So how does it compare to the? I believe it or not, I know I'm a little over 35. I loved my Sidekick. A little, just a hair, smidge.
Well, when the Sidekick came out, it was unique, right? I mean,
we gave it the best of show at CES. Tech TV did.
Yeah,
when it was still Danger. It was. I'll tell you how long ago it was.
It was a long time ago.
It was, because it was when the phone, when you opened it, still went like the Star Trek communicator, and of course Paramount shut that down. So it was long before they ever sold it. I don't know what year that would have been. Probably 2002 or 3. It
was a long time ago.
Yeah,
you know, it's funny. There are things like this that have, you know, they were real innovators, and that thing has kind of sat still in a way, right?
It came from General Magic, which was an
we call this guys
PDA manufacturer.
I said eHome, but it wasn't eHome. What was that UI they had?
Oh yeah, remember that?
The little desk, you know, the Go, whatever it was.
Now I got to look it up.
The little desk.
Bill Atkinson and Andy Hertzfeld, former Mac project guys, started it.
Yep.
In fact, I remember interviewing, I think it was Andy, when Magic Script, Telescript, Magic Cap. Magic Cap.
Yeah.
Magic Cap.
You know, that was one of there's kind of a swirl of products that were lost. You know, when Apple was tanking in the mid-90s, there was all this stuff like Pink, Intelligent, Taligent,
Taligent.
Yeah, Magic Cap, it came out of this. There was a bunch of stuff where there was going to be, some of it was Apple actually working on it. Some of it was the side projects from former Apple employees that were going off into the mobile space and the PDA space at the time. And it's funny, you know, this stuff kind of all filters out through through the industry. And
get ready for this. Yeah. You know what else is derived from General Magic? OnStar.
The GM
OnStar. The OnStar Virtual Advisor was developed by them for General Motors.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
That's interesting, right? So OnStar is obviously specific to GM, and Board has Sync, which is not exactly the same, but is Ford, right?
Yep.
Microsoft's doing something sort of like Ford Sync with, I think it's Mitsubishi or one of the other.
Hyundai, but it's based on Microsoft Car, or whatever they call it, and both of them are the same platform. And then Ford has tricked it up. Actually, I think Ford is going to start moving
I would look
off
at this as being, this is on the same platform as Windows Phone, but is tricked out in a certain way for this very specific market.
Look at this.
A lot of people have there it is.
This is the Magic Cap desktop. And you can see how Mac influenced it was. This is 1995.
Absolutely, yeah. Same guys, black and white,
Same
and all
guys,
that.
Yeah.
And you can almost picture the screen on a Sidekick type device, because that's what it was designed for. Was that not a little smartphone like we have now? These were kind of big, not new.
Always portrait, landscape, not portrait.
Because you would hold it in two hands, and look at it.
I tried. I was showing I was at school this morning. I was showing all of everybody, the teachers and everybody, the iPad, and I was trying to type with my thumbs on the iPad in portrait mode. It's not easy.
It's not easy, yeah.
Well, of course, impossible in the landscape.
A lot of long stretches on that thing.
Yeah. It's really for putting on the desk and typing on the desk. But this was, it's funny. I mean, this is the metaphor we've been trying to bring along for some time, since 1995, 15 years.
Well, these kids that are the target market for this new device, the Kin, formerly Project Pink, are clearly attention deficit disorder types, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. They want to know what's going on with their friends immediately. They want to be able to, put stuff in about what they're doing. Some of the cool stuff about this thing, I have to say, is decent amount of RAM in the sense that it's got like 4 or 8 gigs of storage, depending on which device it is. But there's an unlimited amount of storage up in this cloud service they have for it, and it automatically dribbles content up to there as you're using it, so that you never run out of storage.
But that was the problem, remember, with T-Mobile's Sidekick when they lost the data.
Yes.
And it's not on your phone.
Well, but I would use, this is the what's that fast food restaurant?
In-N-Out?
Jack in the Box. This is the Jack in the Box defense, right? Remember back in the 1990s, some people, I think they died or got very sick.
Yeah, that E. coli thing. Come on.
Oh, they ate hamburgers at Jack in the Box and they got sick.
Yeah.
So I remember saying to someone at the time, you know where the safest place on earth to eat right now is?
Jack in the Box.
Jack in the Box.
Because they ain't going to do that again. Yeah.
They're not going to let that happen.
So you think Microsoft, there's no chance.
I think they've learned there. Yeah. And by the way, there's no indication that this back-end service has anything to do with the Sidekick stuff at all. In fact, I would argue it almost certainly does not.
So it's not related. Huh, interesting.
Yeah. No, this is not the next Sidekick. I mean, I think that, again, spiritually speaking, it sort of is, but technologically, not at all.
Got it.
The phones come with incredible cameras. A 5-megapixel camera with an unbelievable flash.
And
on the low end,
that's the low end.
The high end has an 8-megapixel camera.
That blew me away.
And can shoot HD.
I really got to. This is why I want this thing. Yeah. This is the iJustine phone.
Yes, it is.
It is.
So again, these kids are a little,
Of course, she's 30 years younger than me, blonde, and leggy. But
cooler. Yeah.
I think of myself as the kind of the male iJustine. You're not buying that.
There's a standard in Hollywood where the beautiful young actress is always paired with
the old
Sean Connery or some other guys like 70 years old.
I've got the gray hair.
Yeah.
Hello, Moneypenny. Come here. Show me your Sidekick.
There have been some complaints about this phone, but it reminds me about arguments that we might have about like the iPad or anything else like this, where what they leave out is almost as interesting as what they put in, right? I mean, and in this case, as with the iPad, arguably, some of that stuff was done on purpose. There's no app store going on. There's no, there are no apps to speak of at all. Although Microsoft is saying that they're going to update this thing over the air over time, as they will with.
We'll give you whatever you need.
Well, I mean, it sits kind of logically speaking halfway between what we would think of as a feature phone, which is what we thought this was going to be, right? And then a true smartphone, which I think in today's world means a lot of things, but one of the things that a smartphone has today is an app store and the availability of apps that you can install yourself and then enhance the functionality. They deliberately left this off, and I think what a lot of people don't understand, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I have some misgivings about this as well, because, for example, there are no games on this phone, although I'll get to that in 1 second. In the sense that this is a phone that for at least 50% of the market, a parent will be paying in part for, I think what they want to get away from is the notion that this kid could start racking up extra charges by downloading apps and stuff. It was bad enough when the kids went over on their SMS bill, and then you got this thing, and you were like, "What the heck? What, you were talking 4,500 minutes? How did this happen? You bought $450 worth of apps last weekend. You were trashed at a club.
It does happen.
So I think they're trying to get away from that, right? Without building in a parental control system, which could be disastrous and very typically Microsoft. But the game thing, I would just say, the audience for this has no attention span at all. And while people like you and I would think nothing of getting on a plane or being wherever and maybe playing a game on an iPad or an iPhone or whatever, that is actually too much, I think, for these people. I don't think they have the attention span to do that. I think they're very much living in the moment. And what they're doing is being out and about in the world, and they want to see what their friends are doing, and they want to be able to broadcast what they're doing. They're not actually sitting there playing a game. Now, that's the argument. I mean, we'll see if this, is actually a problem with actual customers. But I think that's the theory. And I think when people complain about the fact that it has no app store or no games, you need to put it into the perspective of the market that it's aimed for. That would be an issue for me using this thing as my only phone. But it remains to be seen whether that's an actual issue, for the people who will be using it.
But you have full Zune capability.
Yeah.
Can you play video? Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's like a Zune.
The Zune UI is identical, and I mean literally identical, to the Zune HD. When that interface comes up, you're in a Zune HD.
Interesting. Is the screen as good?
Yeah, there's two different devices. There's a Kin 1, which is the turtle device. It's a little, It's almost round. It's like the shape. It's a little taller in one direction, but it's almost like that little Apple hockey puck mouse or whatever.
Yeah.
It's small. It really fits in your hand.
Yeah.
And
it has a real keyboard too.
It has a real keyboard. You slide the thing up. It's got a small screen. I want to say 320 by 240 on that one. Beautiful looking screen, touch screen. It doesn't rotate, right? It's one direction only. The bigger device is what they're calling, is more like an iPhone type looking thing. But the screen slides out of the side, like so many smartphones do today. And when you rotate it to use that keyboard, the screen rotates with it. So it's got, I'm not sure if it's an accelerometer, but an accelerometer style effect where, the screen rotates to match.
That's something the Sidekick did not do.
Yeah, it only worked in that one way regardless, right?
Yeah, it was always landscape.
Yeah. And so that screen is HVGA, which is half VGA, which I assume means what?
320 by 240 by what is it? 640 by 480, so by 240, 320 by 240. That's very low res.
Yeah. But, it's small too, right? And actually, I have to say that the screen display was beautiful. It was really actually kind of impressive. Very busy, lots of squares with different stuff going on, and you can, flick to slide it over to the next thing and all that. There's a web browser that looked really nice, yet another version of IE for these little devices. Does not have Flash. And
what does these days?
And there's a case to be made. We could all just do without Adobe. We'd be in a better place,
I think it's going to happen regardless of how you feel. I mean, it's interesting, but with Apple's market strength, I think they're pushing Adobe.
Yeah,
right out.
and it's not just, it's funny. Ultimately, it won't just be Apple because, this week, Apple and Microsoft both released massive security update packages to their customers. So did Adobe.
Right.
And on my home PC, and I haven't looked around yet at my other PCs, but you actually get this annoying little pop-up that won't go away until you reboot. It's the first time I've ever seen this.
Whoa.
But it's similar
from
to
Adobe?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So if you, on a Windows machine today, install some updates over Windows Update, you'll see this little thing that will come up, and it will say, hey, we installed some updates. You need to reboot. You want to do it now? You can postpone it. You can postpone it up to 4 hours. But if you go to bed, that thing's rebooting.
Yep.
It's going to happen. Now, the Adobe one does not automatically reboot your computer, but man, that little thing, it sits down in your tray. It pops up this little thing. You can reboot now or postpone, but it will not stop bothering you until you deal.
You can pay me now, or you can pay me later. You can pay me now, or you can pay me later.
You know what? I mean, at that point, it's like, why am I using Acrobat Reader? I mean, I'm not even talking about Flash.
I don't even want it. Yeah, I don't even want it.
It's like this other thing. It was bad enough. There are other things about this software I don't like, but now you're going to annoy me on the side as like kind of a side job. I mean, this is like the other thing you do.
You sit there and annoy me.
Yeah. It's bad enough when I'm running you, but now you're going to annoy me when I'm not running you. You know, screw that. So anyway, that's my little side.
They have to, though. It's a very serious flaw. So they have to.
Well, okay. Another reason not to use your software.
To use it.
So,
there you go. One more thing.
So people are hacking my computer through your software. I have a solution for that.
Hey, speaking of updates, somebody called me on the radio show. She was kind of cute. She said, I have a computer that was built in 1998. It's got a Pentium 2 processor. Awesome. And I'm just wondering, I think I want to put some more RAM in it. So that was 128 megabytes. And she's running Windows 2000. I said, you got to get a new computer. And frankly, Windows 2000 isn't going to be... When is it? It's almost at end of life, right?
Windows 2000, yeah. This year. So this July.
This is it.
It's getting...
And you don't want to have a version of Windows that's no longer getting updates.
Right.
Actually, maybe you do. Who knows? Maybe nobody will hack it.
This past week... Windows Vista RTM, the original shipping version of Windows Vista expired. So I think it was 2 days ago or yesterday,
right? April
13th. So 2 days ago. And this is the version of Vista that has no service packs installed. If you have Service Pack 1 or Service Pack 2, which you should, you're all set. You'll continue receiving updates and so forth.
Oh, this is the really old Vista.
The original Vista.
Got it. Okay.
The reason, it's funny because that one it seems like that's expiring before these older versions of Windows because in July, but the older versions of Windows have service packs applied to them, right? Microsoft does not support the original shipping version of XP,
right?
Or Windows 2000, but starting on July 13th, Windows XP with Service Pack 2 and all versions of Windows 2000 are dead in the water. They're done.
Oh, I know what she wanted to do. They're telling me in the chat room. She said, my subscription to Norton Antivirus has expired. Should I renew it?
Yeah.
Said, renew it. You should buy a new computer, lady.
Yeah, there are better investments you could be making with your money at this point.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah, Pentium 2.
Pentium 2.
It's good stuff.
She said, it kind of slowed my computer down. I said,
no, that's not it.
It could be a number of things could be going on.
You have other issues.
Yeah. Wow. Google Docs. I see a note here, and I'm not sure what you mean by it.
Well,
Google Docs versus Microsoft Office.
Microsoft Office, yeah. So Google, you may have heard, and this it generated a lot of news. They released as actually of this
They've
day,
updated Docs.
May not be updated yet. I've been
Mine
checking
is.
every.
No, yeah, I have a drawing.
Oh, yours is.
Drawing feature. You didn't get it yesterday?
I'm looking right now.
It's got collaboration and it's got drawing. I can draw now.
I still don't have it. Yeah, so maybe they're doing it per account. I think is how this works.
Yeah.
Now the collaboration stuff is kind of interesting. But, it's funny to me they're calling out these other weird little features like we added a ruler. Neat.
Now I can draw. I can draw in Google
So there's
Docs.
this stuff. But
I can draw a squiggly line.
This generated stories everywhere. All the high-profile newspapers, all the tech blogs. This is Google's latest assault on Microsoft's Office Fortress. And it's like, not exactly.
But look at all the things I can do with it, Paul.
It's pretty.
It's pretty. Look,
I guess the way I would say, we've talked about this a lot. I feel very strongly that cloud computing is the future. And that there are certain areas, and I would include this document stuff. I would include photo editing, eventually even video editing, where people might assume that this can't possibly be something you do in the cloud. You will always need computers. And my argument is, that seems like that may be the case, but actually, even that stuff too is going to be happening in the cloud. The thing is, Google Docs is cute, but let's face it, it's like WordPad. It's not exact. It's like Windows Write or whatever. We used to have. It's not really up to the task. It's cute for taking notes and stuff like that, but it's not as full.
We use it all the time. If you don't need a featured word processor.
I understand, but my point is, so many people do actually need this functionality.
Right.
And by the way, for whatever it's worth, the price of Office has come down dramatically, and they are moving it to the web, and eventually, not in this version, but in the next version, most likely, you'll have these free versions up on the web that it's Office, and when that's the comparison, I mean, there's no contest.
Right.
You know, for $125, you can get 3 copies of Microsoft Office Home and Student.
It does push the price down, though, don't you think, that Microsoft has to
and God bless
consider
them for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There are areas where Google is very effectively competing with Microsoft. I think the whole Google Apps thing with Gmail versus Exchange,
right,
and the cost savings, especially for really small businesses,
right.
I mean, that's a shot across the bow right there.
Right.
Google Docs, not so much, not yet. I mean, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. Anything could happen, but
how
right
much? I mean, what kind of you have sharing now in Office 2010 when it comes out, right?
Yeah, and you have sharing in the Office web apps as well. Same thing, you know, collaboration live in the cloud and all that stuff.
So I think if you wanted more full featured, you have some choices.
Yes.
Yes. And they come from Microsoft.
Where else would they come from?
Another great idea from the minds of Microsoft.
Dun, dun, dun.
Hey, I like that. From the minds of Microsoft.
The minds.
I was
that's how it should be said.
From
the minds.
The minds. From the minds. Hi ho, hi ho. Moving along.
Yes, sir.
How's the Modern Warfare
I should have mentioned this last week. You know, 2 weeks ago, I think it was. I complained about
it. Yeah.
How screwed up this release was, and it's kind of evened out finally. So the way it worked in the beginning was the only way you could play the new maps was to get into these special lobbies, and you didn't have a choice over the game type and all that stuff. And it was actually my son, because, you know, as one of those young hipster guys, experiments with things, whereas, experiments with things online. Yes, that's what I wanted to say.
That's what you meant, of course.
When he gets into a video game, he'll go and try things that wouldn't occur to me to even bother with. So whereas I'm like, I want to play the new maps, I'm going to play in these lobbies, he actually would go back occasionally and look at the other ones and see what was up. And what he noticed was these new maps were, in fact, eventually showing up in the other lobbies. And the way it works now is the way it should have always worked, which is they'll show up. So it's every other game, maybe every third game at most, but you'll get a new map. And that's exactly what I want. So they finally figured that one out. Just in time for the company to implode, by the way.
Infinite Ward? Yeah, what, they arrested people? What happened? That happened a while ago.
We don't know the full story yet, but there's been a lot of discontent between Infinity Ward, which is the company that is owned by Activision and makes the game, right? Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, and Modern Warfare 2. And these are the guys that they date back all the way to the original Medal of Honor on the PC, and then they made the original Call of Duty 2, and they were bought by Activision. And there's been a lot of discord, apparently, between the founders of Infinity Ward in particular and the people at Activision. And this is sort of like the creative types versus the suits and so forth, but they actually physically removed the founders, I guess, from Infinity Ward. Activision did.
I know it's confusing, so that's why the folks at PC Gamer UK have made a YouTube video called "Who's Left Infinity Ward So Far?" Let's just see.
Okay.
And these are. If you watch it, what they've done is they've crossed off in the credits people who are gone.
Oh, that's beautiful. So yeah, what's really interesting about this is the problem between Activision and the founders was very high profile.
Right.
But what's been happening behind the scenes is
the artists and
these guys have all left.
Talents leaving.
And they're joining the founders at a new company that's going to create, guess what kind of game? And there's also a lawsuit underway to determine who owns the intellectual property behind the Call of Duty games. And if these guys do, they're going to take it and they'll possibly continue the series or do whatever they want to do with it.
So it's quite a bit of not only the upper management, but the brain trust, including almost all the writers.
It's pretty clear that Activision screwed the pooch here, and
that's what happens. When
we'll
you
see.
Sue.
I mean, the good news for people who are fans of these games is this year is all set. Treyarch is doing the next game, because they're on an every other version deal right now. So that this year is all set. Next year is in question, right? You would hate to see some other group of people come out with the third part of Modern Warfare and have it be terrible. And that's a possibility. On the other hand, this will put my age in perspective. I think of this as when David Lee Roth left Van Halen. Now we have two groups to follow. So,
and you know what happened then?
Okay.
I'm just a gigolo, and everywhere I go. It could be bad. That's what I'm saying.
That was before he left, though.
That was with Van Halen. He did that.
No, he did that.
That was his
before he
solo
left.
career.
Yeah, before he left Van Halen.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it? He was like his shot across the bow.
Oh, this actually created. So why are we talking about this? So yes, I mean it created some tension within the band because
I bet it did.
Yeah,
he's doing his own thing, and it's god awful. Okay,
it was. Interesting.
I don't want nobody.
He was a showman at heart.
He was, or something. Whatever happened to him? Are they back together?
They are back together.
They are. They're touring.
Yeah, I saw them on tour a couple of years ago.
He's not. David Lee Roth is not bald.
No, he's not bald.
He could be bald.
He's got a dramatically receding hairline.
You're kidding.
He's like 55 years old.
There's justice in the world yet.
Wow.
It's time now, ladies and gentlemen. I wish if I could bring David Lee Roth in here to announce this, I would.
Sure.
It's time to announce the Windows 7 feature of the week.
That hurts.
ReadyBoost.
Yes. So ReadyBoost is a feature that Microsoft debuted in Windows Vista, as I recall. And it is a way, it was designed primarily, and you have to kind of go back to the Windows Vista days to imagine why this was an issue. But when Vista was coming out, of course, it came out with much more stringent hardware requirements, right, than previous versions of Windows. And Microsoft was nervous that people wouldn't be able to, run the OS effectively on their older systems and wouldn't get good performance and so forth. And there are ways around this. You could add more memory, of course. But if you have an older PC like your friend there with the Pentium 2, or if you have a laptop,
not my friend.
Okay, or it's hard.
That's no friend of mine.
It's hard to get into the system to improve the RAM situation. One of the things you could do in Vista was use ReadyBoost.
Yeah,
and you could plug in a USB memory key
of a certain ilk.
Right. And by the way, as with everything else in Vista, nothing's easy. Certain USB keys didn't have the performance characteristics that were required.
Right.
And they had to be USB memory keys. I remember having a conversation with Microsoft years ago where I said, my computer has an SD card slot and I never use it. And it doesn't, the card doesn't stick out of the side. I could just leave it there.
Yeah.
Why can't I use this for ReadyBoost?
Why? Yeah.
So the memory on a ReadyBoost memory card is not analogous to RAM. You don't get 4 gigs of RAM by plugging in. It doesn't work like RAM, but it works as a memory cache, and it's a pretty speedy way to move stuff in and out of cache, and it does improve the overall performance of the system, especially in computers that have lower amounts of RAM, right? So it really does make a difference, but there were some limitations in Windows Vista. So starting in Windows 7, they've removed a bunch of the limitations. So you can have multiple memory devices plugged in, multiple memory keys, whatever. It works with other types of storage, including, finally, SD cards and other.
Wow, that's great.
And you can use up to more than 4 gigs of storage. That was the limitation.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So is it a noticeable benefit?
Yeah, again, it varies depending on the system and how you're using it. So what I've noticed is that, a 32-bit version of Windows, for example, where you have 3 point whatever gigs of RAM, if you're running a lot of heavy things like I do, like Visual Studio and Adobe Photoshop, Word, iTunes, all the stuff at the same time, yeah, you're going to absolutely notice a difference.
Really?
If you've got my home computer, 8 gigs of RAM, you're not going to notice anything. It's not going to. You're not really paging to disk, right. A lot. There's no real need for this cache.
So it's really a lower end computer with less RAM that would have the benefit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's where you're going to see more RAM, but more benefit. I think, broadly speaking, the types of people that are going to want to use this are people using laptops, especially people using 32-bit versions of Windows, especially.
Netbooks, would a netbook benefit?
Absolutely. In fact, in my own netbook, because netbooks, ship with 1 gig of RAM still, right, I think, typically, sometimes 2. The one I have is a year old, so it came with 1 gig of RAM. You can install another gig and get 2 gigs of RAM. That's right on the edge for Windows 7, right? I mean, it's fine for mainstream use, but if you want to do anything on it, and what it has, of course, is an SD card slot. So I have an SD card in there. It's just plugged in. You don't notice it. It's there all the time. I just use it. And it's a way to make that lower-end system run better, and it absolutely does make a difference.
I'm sorry, my farm. I needed to harvest some onions.
Okay. So confused.
I'm just kidding. I was actually fixing the shot. I was off my ball, out of my seat.
You're off your ball, man.
I had a leak in my ball yesterday. So
you are a man of a certain age. You know,
I have to have a bag on my hip now. Windows 7 tip of the week.
I have a lot of tip stuff occurring this week. It's kind of interesting. I should start with a follow-up to last week's tip just to get it out of the way as quickly as possible. I mentioned TechNet Plus last week and how you can get all this Microsoft software.
Yes.
I was looking for this before the podcast and I couldn't find it, but there is, in fact, a way to save 25% off of that already incredible price. So if you visit the article I put on my website about this tip, it has the information about that. So if you're considering TechNet Plus, you can even save more money. So 25% off of, I think it was $349, is a significant savings, right? So,
well, if I do my math correctly, that's several $1,000s you'll be saving.
Yes. Yeah, right.
I may have done my math.
You must be doing my market share math for me.
I may have done my math wrong, but I believe I'm correct.
It's good. It's not that good. So I also got an email from Ola Johansson, who mentioned sort of as a follow-on to the tip that, there are other groups of individuals who can save money on Microsoft software. In fact, it might be interesting to do a big thing about just this topic because you don't, a lot of people don't have to just go in a retail store and buy a box and then, pay full retail price. So if you're a very small business, for example, and by very small, I mean 10 or fewer employees, it's possible. I'm sorry, that's you. So
that's me. Yeah.
It's possible to get free versions of Windows 2008 Web Server and also Secret Server Web Edition through a Microsoft program called Website Spark. And then they have another program called BizSpark. And this is designed for startups, right? Businesses that have been around for less than 3 years and meet some other criteria.
Yeah.
But you get a bunch of free Microsoft software through there as well. Visual Studio, the Expression Studio Suite.
Free?
Windows Server, SQL Server, Office. Yeah, it's basically free. I put a little asterisk next to free because I think the deal is you actually end up paying $100, but not up front. I mean, at some point you have to pay it. I think it's $100.
I better hurry because I don't know. I think 3 years. I think we might be close, if not.
Yeah, I want to look at these deals. There's some interesting stuff there.
So I'm not a startup anymore because I'm more than 3 years old, and we're at 9, maybe might be past 10 employees. So I'm hopeless.
Sorry.
Oh well. We actually are hiring somebody. Well, we signed the papers, but we can't announce it till tomorrow.
Okay. Well, maybe you should sign up for this tonight.
Last chance. Run. I'm going from very small business to small business.
And then this is also not the tip of the week, but I thought this was kind of cool. And I looked it up, and it's true. So Jeff S. wrote in, and he said that today only, and this, in other words, if you're listening to this on Thursday or Friday, Saturday, whatever, it's already over. But on Thursday, April 15th, if you bring a reusable tumbler into Starbucks, they will give you a free brewed coffee, no cost.
Not one of them fancy lattes, but brewed.
No, not a flavored drink of any kind.
Hand brewed.
Just their brewed coffee. Yeah.
I make my coffee with
listening to this right now.
Yes, go get us some Starbucks.
Yep, you have to bring a
See, if you were an avid Twitter user, you would have known that.
Yeah,
that's the kind of thing that sweeps Twitter like a wildfire.
Yeah, this is like the meta Twitter.
Oh yeah,
this is like a Twitter digest. In fact, I'm thinking about making a print magazine.
Twitter Digest. Wouldn't that be funny?
It would be like the best of Twitter.
Best of last month.
Weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly.
We do have a lead time. Sorry about that.
Pre-chewed Twitter. We read it, sure. You don't have to. Well, go out and get your Starbucks coffee, free coffee. I should run over and
Twitter with none of the flaming.
I've been doing a new thing. Dick B.T. Bartolo, the GizWiz, highlighted it for me from the folks who do the aerobie. This is like an ad. I'm starting on doing an ad. You know the aerobie, the ring frisbee? They can't call it a frisbee because it's got a hole in the middle.
Sure.
They make a coffee maker.
Okay.
And it's basically, that was my thought when he said, "Oh, it's from aerobie." You know
this going?
It's a plunger. It's like a French press.
the water through the ground.
But yeah, and it has a filter, so it's like a hybrid between a French press and an espresso, and filtered. It's kind of like the best of all three, and it makes great coffee. I have to make you a cup when you come out here.
Wow,
because you look like a coffee drinker.
I've been told that.
Are you?
Of course I am.
I know. I don't know why. I just knew you were.
I think it's because I've got that picture of the coffee cup.
Oh, that's it. It's your Twitter. Your Twitter picture says coffee all over it.
I have a tip, so let's get to the tip.
Oh, you know, I really like this tip.
This was preamble to the tip.
That was a pre-tip tip. That was the tip of the tip.
If anything, is incomplete, right? Because I need to...
There's much to say about this tip.
There's a lot to say here. There's more to say here than we'll probably say right now. And you know, maybe this is something that could turn into an article. But, you know, Windows 7 has certain features built into it that concern in some way PC to PC sync, right? Not so much backup, but sync. I mean, it has a backup feature that we already talked about. But... you know, and some of it is not necessarily, and in fact, some of it's like sharing, like Home Group is a way to share, you know, content.
But sync is so important.
Actual sync.
Sync is, important. I think, the best kind of backup, to be honest. That's what I do. I love sync. In fact,
increasingly, the way I think of backup is actually more of sync you know, for the stuff that I use. Because what I want is to be working on my computer here in my office and to stand up, walk in the other room, turn on the TV, open my laptop, get back to work without thinking about what it is I need to do to get the file I was just working on. It should just sync automatically. And there are ways to do that, right? You know, Windows 7 has a feature in it called offline files. It's been in Windows for a long time. And that's a way to sync network-based files and folders to a PC. But that's really designed for when you're roaming away from the office. You know, what it actually does is cache those network locations on your hard drive. You still access them over the network interface, and it appears like you're accessing the actual network, and that's how it works. And so if you write something to this supposed network location, it actually writes it to your hard drive, and then when you connect back to the office, it syncs everything back up. And that, whatever, that's okay. But there are better solutions for this kind of thing. And the two that I think of primarily are eventually going to combine into one product, but they're Live Mesh and Windows Live Sync. And these things perform a number of functions, but the big one, of course, is PC to PC folder-based sync. And I use Live Mesh all the time for this purpose. Live Mesh has some interesting advantages over Windows Live Sync and will be the basis for the next version of Windows Live Sync, which is coming in Windows Live Wave 4 sometime in the next month or two or whatever. And what those are things like remote PC access, which is neat, but also a web folder, a web desktop where your folders can, if you want them to be, synced up to this location up in the cloud.
Is it like Briefcase, kind of?
Is it like Briefcase?
No.
No. I think offline files is sort of like Briefcase. I mean, Briefcase from Windows 95, you're talking about that. But that was an
early attempt to do syncing.
To really kind of do the same thing.
To removable media.
Yeah, the PC world was a different place than it is today. We didn't really have the pervasive internet like we do now with broadband speeds and so forth. I think we've talked about this recently. Live Mesh can be used for peer-to-peer sync. If you don't want your stuff up in the cloud, you can go directly from PC to PC.
I've really got to learn to master this because I think I'm missing. I think Mesh is actually potentially huge.
Yeah, I use Mesh as a routine part of my work load of my, how I work.
I read your article on this, and I think it's really good.
FNL used it when we worked in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I use it regularly, and when I say I'm working on a document here, I close it, I stand up, I walk in the other room, open my laptop, log in, open the same document. That's Live Mesh. It works wonderfully.
Love that.
Yeah, it works great. There are other things to think about. I mean, there's also Microsoft has a tool called SyncToy 2.
Yeah, I recommend that one all the time.
Yeah, also a synchronization tool, really. I mean,
they kind of missed the boat because they describe it like as a way to back up your photos. But it syncs anything.
It syncs anything, yeah. And I don't do this anymore, and I'm not even saying that I recommend it, but I did use it with Windows Home Server. Windows Home Server has a very unique way of going about how the file system works and all that stuff, but actually you can get into the normal file system if you're coming over the network, and it works that way, and I did do that for a while. I don't actually do that anymore, but if you are a Windows Home Server user, there are some interesting issues around synchronizing from the server to a PC or vice versa, and SyncToy 2 is a good way to get around that. I don't use Live Mesh on the server, for example. And then I think, one of the things that is happening now and could be a bigger issue in the future too is synchronizing up to the cloud. It's sort of an automatic backup type feature. Carbonite, apparently
Carbonite
advertised on today's podcast. I didn't know that. But,
they haven't yet, but they're. Oh, did I do the Carbonite?
I'm sorry. So we'll do that soon. But
I should have done that.
Carbonite and others,
I forgot.
Mozy and many others offer a PC
for me.
cloud automatic synchronization and i.e. backup. And obviously that's very valuable because if you lose your computer, if it's stolen, your hard drive goes bad, whatever it is, having an off-site backup, your house burns down, whatever it might be, is huge. And obviously the goal with any type of Carbonite type system is that it's cost effective as well. And the reason I singled out Carbonite, although I think Mozy has a similar plan.
There's quite a few. Jungle Disk, if you're like a little more hardcore.
And, they're not expensive. That's the big deal.
No.
I also wanted to mention, we were talking before the podcast, you reminded me of this. I had been doing, and actually still to this day am doing, S3 based backup to Amazon.
That's what I use Jungle Disk for. Yeah.
Yeah. The only problem I'm having now is that I have so much stuff stored there that the monthly bill is actually starting to get a little bit expensive.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, you pay for both bandwidth and storage.
And the storage, right. So my bandwidth is not a problem. I don't spend a lot of money transferring information back and forth. But, Amazon S3 is really, to me, the modern equivalent of the old tape backup system because you use it all the time. You assume that it's there, but you've never actually used it to get anything back.
Right.
And I'm saying it's not possible. But I am a little bit nervous about it. And one of the last things
don't because that's why I like Jungle Disk. Get Jungle Disk.
Install Jungle Disk.
Then you can mount the drive and you can see what's there. So it becomes like mesh.
So one of the issues I've had is that on Windows Home Server, Jungle Disk used to be an option. They had a Windows Home Server add-in. They don't actually offer that anymore.
Oh.
And it's in kind of a weird state of limbo. So I'll have to install the Jungle Disk client on my PC just so I can go up and look at what's there. I kind of want to make sure that I have it somewhere else before I blow it away on S3. But I have been recommending S3 for a while, and unfortunately in my case, I think it depends on how much you have, and that's one of the things I have to go look at. But or if you put too much there, it becomes prohibitively expensive.
Yeah.
I think that's why I've started looking at the Carbonite type stuff.
Well, let me do a little
little
ad for Carbonite right now, real quickly. I forgot to mention this. Carbonite is a great deal because it's I think it's $55 a year, and it is unlimited in the sense that anything internal. Now, people often say, "Well, Leo, you said it was unlimited, so I plugged in my 15 different external hard drives and my network drive, and it wouldn't do it." No, it's unlimited for obvious reasons, unlimited to what's inside your computer. But you can have multiple drives in your computer. You can have multiple partitions. It will back it all up. It doesn't back up the operating system, but you don't want that, right? It doesn't back up application installs. It just backs up data. Now, hey, Starbucks giving you a free cup of coffee for tax day. How about a free backup? 2 weeks free of Carbonite. If you go to carbonite.com, use the offer code TWiT, Mac or Windows. And immediately, as soon as you install it, starts backing up. Now, the reason they wanted you to do a trial, and I really encourage you to do the trial, is, of course, it's limited by your upstream bandwidth. You don't want to do this on a modem. And by how much data. If you've got 100 gigabytes and you have 128 kilobits upstream, it's going to take a while because it doesn't, it's very polite. It never slows you down. So as soon as it sees activity, it backs off. If the computer's being used, it backs off. It does it while you're, kind of idling. So if you had a ton of data, it might take a while. This is why it's get the first 2 weeks free. You'll have updated everything there. You can try, and I do recommend that to do this too. Try restoring. With Carbonite, you can log on. They have an iPhone application or any computer. You log on. You can see your data. You can access it. You can download it, so you can verify that it's there and so forth. Now, after the trial, once you're satisfied it's doing what you want, and I know you will be, 2 months free when you use the offer code TWiT. So TWiT is the offer code for both the free credit cardless trial, and once you try it, and I want you to try it, then the free 2 months on a year subscription. $55 a year. That's less than $5 a month for everything that's on your internal drives. And it does it automatically. It does it transparently. It just does a great job. And there's additional features, encryption, AES 256-bit encryption, so nobody can see what you've backed up. SSL, point-to-point. I mean, it's just really great. I have tried them all. And I really recommend Carbonite. It's the one you use. CARBONITE, Carbonite.com. It's backup done right, and you got to back it up to get it back. So that's better than a free cup of coffee.
It's true. If you know people at Carbonite, one thing I'd really like to see is a Windows home server add-in for Carbonite, along with a plan that would make sense.
I'll talk to them. They have Carbonite Pro, and I think that might...
I looked at it, and it wasn't clear. They do have I think the Pro plan is aimed at servers and also...
It's aimed for business so that you have as many desktops as...
and it's tiered pricing, I think.
It is not, because obviously now they can't do unlimited.
Yeah. I'd like to see something, you could have a home computer with a couple of terabytes of data on it, $55 a month,
Well, exactly.
I'm curious, my Windows home server, I'm not actually sure. If I were to look at it and say, okay, not counting the videos, how big is this thing? I'm thinking it must be somewhere in that range. I mean, it seems like it'd be nice if there was
probably is comparable. I'll ask him. David Friend, the CEO. Yeah, he's a great guy. Actually, he was at Yale, so we had, we talked about that, but he started remember the synthesizer company called ARP? One of the earliest synthesizer companies. It was he was an engineer, and he started it, and I mean, he's got the stories he was telling about rock and roll, and I mean, it's just really cool. He's a neat guy.
That's great.
And Carbonite was like something he started because his daughter was in college. He's an entrepreneur, and lost all the contents of her hard drive.
Sure.
And he said, there's got to be something that, I could install on my daughter's laptop so she wouldn't have to think about it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where he came up with Carbonite. It's a pretty cool idea. Let's see. We still have to go the software of the week, 2 of them as usual. You naughty, naughty boy. Before we do that, though, I want to mention Audible, too. So let's get both of the ads out of the way, then we can go full steam ahead.
Okay.
Audible.com/Windows. Audible's another freebie, a free book. Audible's 70,000 books, an incredible bookstore of audio, the best audio entertainment. They finally have their winner in their brackets. They have they do the March Madness brackets, and they have the best books, the winning books. New book from Jan Martel, the author of The Life of Pi. I can't wait to read that. But you've got a book that I love to recommend.
Oh, so you know this?
I have read it, and I loved it. I guess I have to say I've listened to it, right?
Okay, yeah. This is an amazing book. It's called
so good.
The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. And it's the story of, it actually wasn't called the World's Fair, but the World's Fair in Chicago.
That's the White City in the title.
Yeah, 1893, I guess. It was the one that came in the wake of that famous Paris exposition that gave us the Eiffel Tower and so forth. So they were under a lot of pressure, the city of Chicago, to do something that would beat that. And it's amazing because I have to say, from my own perspective, I know nothing about this fair at all. It doesn't resonate with me in the slightest.
Nobody's ever heard of it.
But at the time, it was described as the biggest event in American history since the Civil War.
Yep.
It was thought to be the biggest thing in the world, at the time.
Yep.
But what's interesting about this is, at the time, there was also a serial killer living in Chicago who was using this fair to find victims.
That's
right?
The devil in the title.
Yeah, right. This book is there's 2 stories. It's the guy who was essentially the architect, I guess, behind the fair, and then the guy who was the serial killer, and how they never actually meet, but they, their stories are sort of entwined. And the beginning of it's funny. There's some historical perspective that I do understand. One of the best friends of the guy who designed the World's Fair was on the Titanic,
right,
when it sank. And the guy who did design the World's Fair was on the sister ship, the Olympic, I want to say it was. And they were heading in different directions across the Atlantic Ocean. And he wanted to send the guy a wireless message and, see how things were going. And, they refused to accept it or refused to send it. He walked up there to demand, what was going on here and how dare you not send my message. And they said, we're heading to rescue the boat. Now it's sank.
You get a chance to talk to him yourself. Yeah.
That's why, sorry. And it's just a fascinating thing. And again, it sort of involves a period of history in the United States that I'm just unfamiliar with.
Most people are.
It's a story.
It's it's only 100 years ago, but it's like a whole different world.
It is literally a bunch of stuff I just never heard about. And,
right.
and it was such a big deal at the time. It's really interesting. And it reminds me of some of the, if you're into the whole serial killer stuff, if you look at stuff like, Jack the Ripper or that famous Citizen X story from the Soviet Union, where it's either a time and place where it's pre-forensics and there wasn't a lot they could do to catch these guys, or in the case of the Soviet Union, they had to pretend that this didn't happen under communism or whatever it was. Really interesting. So again, it's just a time period where it was possible to get away with stuff in a way that wouldn't be possible today. If you watch any reality TV, you know that your DNA is on everything you ever.
Well, this guy was so creative. This is an amazing book because you're right. It's several different stories. Yeah. It's also the Ferris wheel, the story of the Ferris wheel. Yeah. Which is fascinating because that's what they answered. They finally responded.
This is some crazy stuff. A bunch of the cities in the United States were jockeying to get this fair, and Chicago ultimately won. Much to the disappointment of New York City, which thought itself the greatest city in the world.
Right.
And then. There's a great line in there where I can't remember some of the other cities. I want to say Philadelphia was in the running, New York City was, and St. Louis. And nobody cared about St. Louis. It was kind of, Philadelphia.
This was before the arch.
The mother, the place where freedom started. New York City was obviously a big deal, and
St. Louis. What do you got? What do you?
No one cared about St. Louis. Really interesting.
Oh, I really was fascinated by it. It is, it's a little creepy when the serial killing part, but just really good and a great history. The Devil in the White City, two of the biggest stories of the turn of the century. Eric Larson is the author, narrated by Scott Brick. It's yours free if you go and get a gold account. Now, you don't have to listen to this. There's almost all the other books are available. It's one credit, but almost all books are one credit. Audible.com/Windows. Sign up for the gold account. That's a book a month. And your first one's free, yours to keep. You can cancel at any time. Audible.com/Windows. And from the chat room, great news. Audible just tweeted that they are working on a Android and Audible experience for iPhone, and look for it in summer of 2010. Now, you can listen to Audible on the iPhone. It uses iTunes, but the Audible application doesn't run on the iPhone. I guess they're going to do the Audible application. But Android is what we're waiting for, summer of 2010. But almost every other device besides the Android devices. It's just great. Audible.com /Windows. Thank you for your support, Audible. We appreciate it. Now, a couple of software picks, and we are out of here. This is an interesting one. I never heard of this first one.
Yeah. Now, this was demonstrated at Mix during the keynote. And, one of the things I really liked on the iPad is the Marvel Comics application. It's a nice...
so great.
It's a nice interface. It's the right kind of device for that visual presentation. I can't claim to have read a comic book in a long time, but I was a big fan growing up. Obviously, was a fan of graphic novels as a young adult. And reading a comic book on this device, I thought, I could get into this again. There was just one problem, and maybe still is a problem with the Marvel Comics app, and that is that, at least when the iPad first came out, it's all like superhero stuff. It's literally people in spandex, and it's kind of, whatever.
I'd like more graphic novels,
Right, that's what I was looking for. Well, this software pick of the week is Graphicly, right, like graphic.ly, and that's the web address, is basically a comic book platform. It's available in a Windows 7 native application that supports touch. So it works a lot like that Marvel Comics app. There's an Air application, right? And eventually there'll be a web-based experience as well. And it works a lot like the Marvel Comics app. There are some free comic books and graphic novels that you can download. But the big difference is it's not, it's not there's some of the spandex stuff, I guess. But there's some actual excellent graphic novels in there. And the one that I actually bought, and I bought it literally because I downloaded all the free versions, just like I did with, the Marvel Comics app.
Right.
But there's a graphic novel series called Wanted, which is for adults. It's not a kid's story at all. But it's the basis for that movie with Morgan Freeman and Angelina Jolie and all that. In fact, I just watched it the other day. The graphic novel is dramatically different in some ways from the movie, which really shouldn't be all that surprising. But I find the differences really interesting. It's the same core story, but it's a graphic novel. It's really beautifully illustrated. It works in the same way. If you're familiar with the Marvel Comics app, it works in sort of the same way in that you can look at an entire page presented on your screen, but you can also navigate, and this is the default in Graphically, which I really like, which is basically panel by panel. So they'll show you the whole page, and then you navigate next, and then it starts with the first panel moves, and it moves through it like that. and it's a great experience. It's a beautiful looking thing. Like I
Now,
said,
it says they're in beta. Were you able to get it right away?
Yeah, I think they is it not available to the public? If I just
Since we've launched into private beta.
Oh, okay. Well, so that's why I have two. So, sign up for the beta and
I'm
check it
signing
out.
up right now.
I believe that the Windows 7 native app is coming out any day now, and this is, like I said, this is an Adobe Air thing. But I ended up purchasing this series just based on the free first edition, a free first volume or whatever. It was really, really nice. So this should be coming out anytime soon. Then I guess is the story there. But it's really well done. And, if you've looked at that Marvel comic app and thought, geez, it would be nice if I could get this somewhere else other than the iPad.
You can.
This is the deal. And they're going to have an iPhone, iPad app and all that stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Good stuff. And the second one is just, Visual Studio 2010 was finalized this week along with .NET Framework 4 and Silverlight 4. And there are free versions available, so if you want, the C#, Visual Basic, the Web Developer, and some others, those are all available standalone tools that are free. Microsoft.com/express. And then I wanted just to remind people, I think we mentioned this a little while back, but students can get the professional version of Visual Studio 2010 for free. And I've got a link here in the show notes where you can find out how to do that. You have to prove to them that you're a student, but once again, in the scheme of you get a good deal, depending on who you are, students can get a free version of a pretty high-end version of Visual Studio 2010.
My friend, I can't believe how fast the time flies when you start an hour and a half late.
Yes. Right, you are.
Right-ho, my friend, right-ho. Paul Thurrott is the editor-in-chief of the SuperSite for Windows. Go to winsupersite.com, but